We must find a way to know each other.
Bishop Tdjs is a tireless coalition builder who routinely partners with corporate CEOs, elected officials, and community leaders to improve the well-being of underserved communities around the world. This is particularly so in areas such as housing, employment, business, and criminal justice. His nationally acclaimed Texas Offenders Reentry Initiative has helped thousands of returning citizens find jobs, complete their education, and reunite with their families. Through the TDJs Foundation, he is working to close the digital divide, providing free online STEM training to thousands of young people from vulnerable communities. His single-family housing development in South Dallas is a national model for mixed-income housing, and he is a mentor to numerous entrepreneurs.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to go to school.
Let me set him up, John. Let me set him up.
Please, go ahead, Lisa.
Let's talk about the bishop. Bishop T.D. Jakes is a world-renowned bishop, author, and media mogul. He preached his first sermon in 1976 and started the Potter's House in 1996. He is one of the most coveted faith-based influencers in business, education, film, and entertainment, and he has advised the last 3 presidents. I think the church better say amen.
Amen. This is a very special person to me. I consider very few people, though, I mean, most people call me and they want my opinion about this, opinion about that. I call Bishop Jakes to ask his opinion about this and about that. He is an underground technologist. He is a social media and technology genius. This guy knows. He gets data reports on the technology and social media impact daily, just along with the financial reports.
He's watching his metrics. He's measuring and managing every day.
He runs a brand, a business, a faith, a ministry, an operation. He does well and does good too. He has integrity. He's transparent. The way he is privately is the way he is publicly. Just more fun privately, but the same guy. I love our 2 a.m., midnight to 2 a.m. text message conversations.
Okay, I love you, Bishop, but I'm going to watch you on TV. We're not doing 2 a.m. We're not doing that, Bishop. My grandfather used to do that at 2 a.m.
Yes.
He'd come and want to hear me say his poem, I Am Somebody, here in Atlanta that he wrote back in the 1950s, right after the Klan burned a cross on his front yard.
So Bishop Lisa Borders, in addition to being former president of the WNBA, head of the Coca-Cola Foundation, president of the Coca-Cola Foundation, president of the Atlanta City Council. Her father was one of the pastors in the civil rights movement here, along with Andrew Young and Dr. King and others. So she's got this vaulted, the Borders family, Reverend Borders. So she's in the same league as you. And Ambassador Young sends his best, by the way. He was feeling a little under the weather this morning, but he's here with us in spirit. We just told him he's feeling a little under the weather. He said, should I come? I said, no, stay right there. We don't want you to get, I cannot afford to have an icon get sick on my watch. So we just want to set this up for you to talk, really. Because I think the more that people I think if America got your spiritual business plan and your literal business plan, and we exported what you do inside of the Potter's House, et cetera, into every nonprofit organization, into for-profit corporations, into our government, we could solve 2/3 of the problems that ail us at scale. Bishop, over to you.
First of all, you all make me sound better than I really am. Thank you, Lisa, for that generous introduction. And my dear friend John, I'm deeply honored and grateful to be with you today and to add whatever I can as a way of contribution to the conversation. I think, first of all, where I would like to start in discussion is that we are currently existing in an atmosphere of disruption. Total disruption in every level of life, either because of COVID-19 or because of political challenges or racial challenges. Our country is in the deepest disruption that I have seen, certainly since the 60s, and perhaps even worse than the 60s, because we didn't have a pandemic coexisting at the same time that we had demonstrations. That's not bad news. That's really good news. Because when we ask for change, the answer is always disruption. You can't have change and not have disruption. And so the first thing I would like to say to everybody listening is just calm down. This disruption is an opportunity for change,
Well said.
for upward mobility, for innovation, for rethinking ourselves, our country, our police departments, our criminal justice system, our technology and our involvement in technology, the culture of people of color, moving them from consumers to investors and from consumers to producers. We have to become less concerned about watching movies and become more concerned about making movies, less concerned about buying technology and more concerned about creating technology. We need to, in the disruption, is an opportunity to switch roles. And that's where I think we join the conversation. The uniqueness of me being a person of faith and a faith leader sitting at the table that I've been able to sit at has been shocking for a lot of business people. Historically, business people have not talked to people of faith, especially faith leaders. Elected officials do, particularly during campaigns, but CEOs have not done so. But what we have that is very, very important is a trusted voice in the community.
Sure.
You can build all the answers you want, but if you cannot build trust, and there's a reason that we put money in trust, because people invest in what they trust. We buy from whom we trust. We use who we trust. So my conviction is building a four-pronged approach to lifting the community, which is my goal, which is my commitment, which is the focus, as the legacy of my life, is to see underserved communities brought up to liquidity and equality and equity that is necessary to promote the strength that we need so that we can sit at the table from a position of strength. Because everybody who sits at the table doesn't sit in the same size chair.
Bishop, let me jump in here for just a second, Bishop, not to cut you off, but I want to unpack that just a little bit, because you started Potter's House 20 years after you preached your first sermon, and you started it with minimal resources. And I hear lots of our people, but people in general, talking about what they don't have and what they are losing, as opposed to an opportunity and let's pivot. Can you unpack that a little bit and talk about what enabled you to stay focused on moving forward in the face of the adversity that was bopping you in the nose every day?
First, let me back it up just a little bit and say I have several companies. I have for-profit companies and I have not-for-profit companies. The Potter's House is, of course, a 501c3. TDJs Enterprises is my for-profit company, and it's interesting to understand that my for-profit company preceded my ministry.
Okay, okay.
So my for-profit company existed when I was in West Virginia. It was founded many years before I ever came to Dallas. And so it is actually older. TDJs Enterprises is much older than the Potter's House.
Understood.
And in both cases, whether for-profit or not-for-profit, whether you're doing a startup business or whether you're doing a startup church, the entrepreneurial principles are very, very similar. Yes, the passion is preaching, but the reality is the mortgage. So you have to.
Weren't we talking about economics earlier? If you don't have the money, you can't pay for anything.
Right.
It doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, the gospel is free. It's like water. The water is free, but the pipes cost you.
Right.
And in order to get a building, in order to hire staff, we currently have 300 people on staff. In order to be able to engage television and technology and all the mediums of influence that we have and have the expertise to be able to execute it in a spirit of excellence, you have to have payroll, which means life insurance, health insurance, human resources, public relations, accounting, all kinds of things, IRS compliance, all kinds of things are involved in it. IT is a critical part of it. And we started with absolutely nothing. So I consider myself very much a bootstrap person, both on the for-profit and the not-for-profit side. The for-profit side was gospel plays, bringing them to film. We won the Santa Barbara Film Festival.
Wow.
We started doing things on screen. We did $500 million worth of business on television and movies through our for-profit entities. And we started with literally nothing.
Wait, Bishop, 500
500
billion
million.
with a B?
Yeah, and he also has a real estate. He has
I
a real
love
estate group that he's got. But I also want to make this clear to everybody watching, and I have the same obsession. There's a firewall up with audited financials on the nonprofit.
Right.
In his case, is Faith. Mine is a nonprofit. Audited financials, bulletproof audited financials. My financials are some of the best in the whole sector. Four-star rating with Charity Navigator, because people are not going to give me the benefit of the doubt. Neither him, neither you. In fact, they're trying to target us. So the nonprofit has this clear transparency. The nonprofit cannot benefit the for-profit. The for-profit can benefit the nonprofit, not the other way around. He's kept this thing. Again, it's best in class. And he doesn't need to bleed on one to lead the other. He is the brand.
Right.
And in order to do good, he's got to do well first.
That's why I wanted him to unpack it. I didn't want anybody to take that for granted.
Yeah,
so
he and my wife
John.
were also born in the same town in West Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Bishop, so it's the business plan is what I think what Lisa was getting to is the business plan. What has been, if I got this right, Lisa, your business plan?
I want to go deeper than that. It's the business mentality. Before the plan has to be the business mentality. I grew up in the house with a father who started a business with a mop and a bucket and ended up with 52 employees back in the 60s.
Okay.
So growing up in an environment where people think business is a critical part of the conversation. Many of our underserved communities are not in the conversation or in the room to get the mentality. So you can develop the plan all you want to, but if you don't have the mindset to think with a business mentality, you have a plan that you can't execute because you don't think like that. How do I get the mentality? You have to hang around people who have the mentality. Mentalities are contagious.
I love it.
You can become infected if you change hanging around people that you have to feed and start hanging around people that are feeding you. You develop the mentality and the expertise to be able to function at a higher level of reasoning. Having said that, there has to be strong distinctions, not only between the for-profits and not-for-profits, but I also have, as you alluded to, the TDJs real estate ventures, by which we buy real estate, property, community development, build homes, both in terms of retail and multifamily, as well as single-family dwelling places for acquisition and opportunities to stop the regentrification of neighborhoods by building attainable and affordable homes that you are going to get financed, as the previous speaker spoke about. We don't do the financing, but we do the community development. All of these have to be insulated walls of business with their own accounting, their own system, their own expertise. And you have to be able to execute them from the top. And what I mean by that is you have to have everybody reporting back to you through these different ventricles in a way that you understand the distinctives between what is required. For instance, if you have a 501c3 that's not a church, you have to file a 990.
Right.
If it is a church, you don't have to file a 990. Understanding the nuances of each business is important. To somebody who hears that and says, oh my God, that sounds like I've got to go back to college for life, not necessarily. It's not that difficult. What you do have to do is be willing to sit at the table and ask questions.
That's right.
And educate yourself in the moment. You can educate yourself in the moment. If you don't sit down at the table trying to prove to everybody that you deserve to be at the table and come to the table from a perspective of both trying to integrate into a new culture, but also trying to educate yourself as to how things operate. Because the books say one thing, but real business operates another way.
Right. That's right.
So what you learned in college may not necessarily prepare you to sit at the board table to make the decisions you need to make. It will help you to read the ledgers. It'll help you to understand what's red line. It'll help you to understand the bottom line and all of that, but it may not help you to understand the culture through which things operate. So what we want is a business mentality. Number two, we want a business plan. Number 3, we have to be able to finance that business plan. And this is generally where we get hung up.
Yeah.
Sure.
Access to capital is a huge problem.
Yeah.
But because I grew up in the 60s where my father raised his own capital because he could not get loans and things like that, he had to scrap and save and build and bootstrap his way up. I did not enter into the business world expecting a lot of help.
You and me either.
I built my resources up until they started coming to me rather than me coming to them.
That's right.
So in order to do that, when you have nothing and you don't have any rich uncles to die and hand you a lot of money and a lot of resources, you have to have what is called delayed gratification.
Yeah.
One of the problems that stops us from being successful is that we want to look successful rather than be successful.
That's a drop the mic moment.
He's talking now.
You done started preaching.
It's busyness, not business.
Yeah.
When your outflow sees your inflow, then your overhead will be your downfall.
Right.
Absolutely. You only got 2 doors in business, income and outflow. And if you control those 2 doors, you can run anything.
That's
It's
right.
just 2 doors.
Right.
What's coming in and what's going out. And you either have to increase one and diminish the other in order to create the profit margin that exists between the 2.
That's right.
Understand? I mean, it's really simple.
It is.
It's, no matter how big the room is, it's only got 2 doors. And once you understand that,
Break it down, Bishop. Break it down.
I can get it where you can understand it. And you need to have gatekeepers at each door
Right.
that are trusted gatekeepers that are accountable back to you.
That's right.
So they can do it. Our problem when we go into business as entrepreneurs, we can do the work. Grandma can fry the chicken, but she can't keep the books.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
So you open up Nanny's Chicken Shack, okay?
Right.
And Nanny's in the kitchen.
Right.
And if Nanny's in the kitchen, the chicken may be great, but the business may go to hell.
That's right.
You don't necessarily need to be able to fry chicken to open up Nanny's Chicken Shack. You can hire a nanny. What you need to be able to do is watch those 2 doors.
That's right.
If you watch those 2 doors, let Nanny watch the chicken, and we can run the business. Most entrepreneurs are so busy producing the product or loving what they do. They're an artist, they love the music, or they're an actor and they love to entertain, but they don't love to do the business.
That's right.
You have to love to control the 2 doors in order to be successful.
96%, Bishop, of all black businesses don't have an employee. 96%, which means that it's busyness, not business. It's a self-employment project. I got this contract. I used to work at the city of Whoosie What's for do graphic artists, and I'm gonna sit there and do the graphic artist work until the contract runs out. The person who hired me retired. I can't get another contract. I didn't build any wealth. I didn't save anything. I was living from hand to mouth. When your outflow sees your inflow, then your overhead will be your downfall. Now you're broke and you're poor, and you built there's no generational wealth to pass down. It's just generational debt, and that ready fire, and then we get emotional about business, which is even worse.
Right.
So it's busyness. It's not business. We're brilliant, but it's what we don't know that we don't know that's killing us. But we think we know, and God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we listen twice as much as we talk. That's why when I call Bishop, it's really funny. He calls me sometimes. Who asks me a question? Hey, John, I don't know this. What do you think? I'll call him more times than he calls me and ask him a question. And you got to have enough humility to acknowledge, I don't know this stuff.
Yeah, our relationship is an opportunity. In fact, relationships are your greatest resource.
Right.
You can get money if you have great relationships.
That's right.
Relationships are your greatest resource. And until you value relationships and don't allow people to destroy your relationships, I don't care how much money you have, if you don't have those relationships and protect those relationships at all costs, they become your greatest resource because everybody you know knows somebody you need to know.
I call it relationship capital. That was my last book memo. Yep.
Understood completely.
And, I mean, Lisa, we know each other because of relationship. This is our relationship capital. We met each other. We valued each other. We didn't let that relationship get distorted,
That's right.
taken advantage of, pimped, manipulated. We made sure that when there was an misunderstanding, potential one, we called each other, communicated.
Clear the
when
air.
you were down, you called me. When I was down, I called you. Same thing with Bishop.
Yeah.
That built trust. It built that. And in many ways, a lot of things that's going on here is because of our mutual relationships. It wasn't somebody putting it in a resume. We trust him. We knew him. Hey, Lisa, I need this. What do you think?
Right.
That's how the world works. Isn't that right, Bishop?
That's exactly how the world works, and it's relationships externally and internally. You have to be relationally proficient in order to organize an organization. You talked about people who don't hire anybody. You have to understand it's not just about sharing wealth with them. It is also about valuing you so that you are not being used for anything less than your highest and best use. Great leadership works itself out of a job.
Right.
So what that's great
Spot
leadership
on.
at its best.
That's right.
So it's not that you can't afford to hire anybody, it's that you can't afford not to.
Ooh.
You can't afford not to. If you don't hire somebody to do what you can be replaced from doing, that means you have a vacancy in the area of somebody who is thinking the business, not doing the business.
Right.
So the best people you can have around you are people who are paid to think, not to perform. And in most cases, that's going to be you at first.
Yeah.
So in order for you to think your business through, you have to get your hands
You need
free
some
from
help.
doing your business.
That's right.
Yeah, you got to have some help. He who makes his living with his own two hands will never have much because you have already limited your productivity down to two.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If you had 8 hands, you could multiply. Let me go biblical on you for a minute.
Yeah.
One of the great
This is gonna go over.
commands
It's
in
fine.
the scriptures is to be fruitful, multiply, replenish, and subdue. It's the first command that God gave. In order to be fruitful, you must be seedful. Find out what you have that the seed, the potential, and that you can bring to fruition. And once you bring it to fruition, then you want to multiply it. In business terms, that's franchising.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay, multiplication of what is working in your life is franchising.
Yeah.
So once you find something that works, you want to multiply it. And that's where the fear comes in. Because once we get something that works, we're so glad after years of oppression and years of being let down, we're so excited that we hold on to it. We won't let anybody near it and we smother it to death.
Yeah.
We asphyxiate the future holding it too tightly.
Well, not only that, Bishop, you got your hand closed, you can't receive your next blessing.
Absolutely. Now you're preaching.
Well, and
I got a good teacher
You're
here.
preaching.
And I'd rather
Yeah.
have 10% of something than 100% of nothing. But you can't have 10% of something unless you're willing to dilute or share that equity with others as you grow. Or he calls it franchising. I'm going to say something now. We're over time, by the way, but we're wrapping up. This is the last segment. I'm sure you watched it, think this is important enough. We're going to be over time. And I want to thank Comcast, by the way, Xfinity, NBC for their use of their beautiful headquarters here in Atlanta at no cost to us. So for everybody paying your Comcast bill, you just helped us out indirectly. Please pay your Comcast bill. But this is such an important conversation. I want to continue it a little bit, and we'll wrap it up. So as I'm listening to Bishop's story, I'm thinking about my story, Lisa. I'm thinking about your story. I didn't have any. I've never said this before. I deal with all these banks. Listen to me now. I've never gotten a bank loan to start any of my businesses. I've never got a bank loan to operate any of my businesses. I use the compounded hustle of my being able to sell my vision into the next purchaser because I know when I sell that's profit. I don't have to go and the worst thing you can do is build try to use long-term equity with short-term debt because the debt has a payment on it every month. You may not get the sale every month. That's stressful. That puts you in survival mode I talked about earlier versus thriving and winning mode. I want to be free to be. So people don't believe, I got all these banks around me. I don't want nothing from none of them. In fact, I want them to give me money when I can prove I don't need it. That's the best kind of money. That's cheap money. So, real quick point, Bishop, I want you to pivot on this.
Let me jump, just before you say that,
go
let
ahead.
me jump in.
Go ahead.
Because I don't want our community to sleep on opportunity zones. Opportunity zones create opportunities for real estate investments in particular zones in cities and communities
that have been
where
depressed.
getting the money It's the least of your trouble.
Right.
It's going to be the least of your problems because the investor sees the opportunity zone as a tax shelter for their investment, and it's a tax advantage for them to put money into it.
That's right.
We are asleep at the wheel at this opportunity, and they are in our communities. These opportunity zones, you can get investors to invest in them. If you have a good plan and a good business plan, they will invest into those communities because it is a tax shelter that beats any other shelter for the investor to become involved in. And it is designed to rehabilitate the community. Right. If we don't get a hold to these opportunity zones and maximize them, through non-traditional loans, you don't necessarily have to go through the bank at all.
Right.
You can get investment into those communities by getting control of those properties. Getting control of those properties brings investment into that cash-infused investments into that community that is a benefit to the billionaires and millionaires because they don't have to pay capital gains on it.
That's right.
If they keep it in there 10 years or more, the capital gains is lowered or non-existent altogether. So you have the capital to rehabilitate the community and start going forward. By the time we hear about opportunities, they're gone.
They're gone.
Right.
And it leads to the regentrification of the community because we're not hearing those sorts of things. I just wanted to throw that in. I knew we were out of town. You can dig it up, you can look it up, you can study it up and research it. But they're talking about our community.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we
Right
have
now.
to get right now, seizing that opportunity is very important. And if you can't do it on a big scale, you can get one house.
That's right.
And flip that one house in that one community. It's an opportunity zone. The money you put into that house can be deferred as it relates to capital gains. You can rent it out. You can start. My mother started doing real estate one house at a time. She ended up owning every street, every house on our street, and several at other places. In fact, by the time my mother died with Alzheimer's, she had money coming in she couldn't even remember.
That's right.
Wow.
So you don't have to be, and we did not come from wealth.
West Virginia. Yeah.
We came from government cheese and powdered milk and powdered eggs and chickens in the backyard, okay? We did not come from wealth. Do not allow where you came from to determine where you're going.
Yeah. You didn't come from wealth, but you came from wit. You know, this has been some strong insights and strong perspectives today, Bishop, and we are so grateful for the work that you have done and that you continue to do and the wisdom that you continue to share. So thank you so very much for being with us.
I'm so honored.
I'm going to wrap this up now, but I want the audience, and I hope they replay this, share this with your friends, take this link, share it all around. You need to watch this 10 times. He gave you some jewels today. Or as Jay-Z said on his album 444, I'm going to give you $1 million worth of financial literacy wisdom for $9.99. He just gave you, and this didn't cost you $9.99, it cost you nothing because our sponsors paid for it. You got to replay and listen to what Bishop said. This was a blessing today.